The following podcast is an exclusive presentation of Project Entertainment Network. There shall come a podcast like no other. Defenders Dialogue with Brian Keene and Christopher Golden. Marvel Comics' original superhero non-team convenes once again. The Incredible Hulk, the Savage Submariner, the Master of the Mystic Arts, Doctor Strange, and a dynamic supporting cast of Marvel superheroes battle against evil as the Defenders. Without further ado, true believers, here's your hosts, Brian Keene and Christopher Golden. Excelsior!
And welcome back once again, true believers, to Defenders Dialogue. I'm Brian Keene.
And I am Christopher Golden. And Brian, Excelsior, my friend.
Excelsior to you, my friend. I'm glad to be back with you. This week, we're covering Godzilla issues 12 through 14, the Mega Monsters from Beyond saga. But before we do that, just a programming note, Chris. As listeners of the Horror Show with Brian Keene know, we are in the process of figuring out what we're going to do with the future of these podcasts. There's going to be some changes at the Project Entertainment Network, and the Horror Show and Defenders Dialogue and several other podcasts are going to become free agents, so to speak. Now, these will all take effect. These changes will take effect April 1st.
Brian, let me interrupt you and say, Tom Brady is a free agent, and I believe that if he signs with another team, it's going to be for $30 or $40 million. Do you think that we'll get that?
The Horror Show with Brian Keene might be able to command that. Defenders Dialogue might get 30 cents.
Hey, now.
If we get a penny per listener, we'll have about $1.
Excellent.
So, but a lot of folks
That's
have been
97 cents more than I thought.
There we go. Folks have been asking, does this mean it's going to change how we listen to the podcast? No. Podcasts are going to be available wherever you're listening to them now. One thing that might change, however, definitely one thing that's going to change is advertising. So if you have something to advertise on Defenders Dialogue, and you want that ad to run after April 1st, what you want to do is you want to send me an email, briankeene@live.com. And that goes for the Horror Show with Brian Keene. That goes for Mary San Giovanni's Cosmic Shenanigans podcast. And that goes for the very popular Grindcast podcast. If you want to advertise on any four of those shows or all four of those shows after April 1st, just send me an email, briankeene@live.com. I'll hook you up. And that's all we can say for now, but a very exciting time, Chris. Very exciting time to be podcasting.
Especially because I think, we've got at least 4 listeners now, not 3, 4. And that doesn't even include Mary, who's listening in the background while she makes her tea.
That's right. That's right. So hello to Victor and hello to Hank Wagner and all our other regular listeners. Let's get into it. Godzilla 12, Chris. The same creative team. Doug Mensch on doing the writing. Herb Trimpe is the artist. And it's
Fred Kita on inks.
Yep. I don't know that we want to do a play-by-play.
No, we don't have to do a play-by-play, but we can sort of go through it. I mean, what's super interesting to me, Brian, is like, I was reading issue 12, which we'll discuss in a second what this is, and it's all sort of more reminiscent of some of the, some of the odder Godzilla movies where they bring in the aliens, the
70s movies, particularly. Godzilla versus Mechagodzilla and some of those very much.
Yeah, but what's interesting to me is like it actually gets good.
Oh, yeah.
It's like the first issue 12, I was like, that's pretty boring. But it really grew on me over the course of the 3 issues. But go ahead.
There's some great monster fights, more so than any issue that we've covered so far. I think the monster battles in these 3 issues are the most reminiscent of an actual Godzilla movie.
Yes, no question.
And as a longtime Marvelite, a big fan of Timothy Dum Dum Dugan, I really like his character arc over these 3 issues.
Yeah, as he's coming to terms with the fact that maybe Godzilla is not the big stupid evil creature that he thought.
Right. So we open with Godzilla somewhere in the American Southwest, and a train collides with him because I guess the conductor didn't see Godzilla standing on the track, and Godzilla thinks it's just a giant serpent. Several miles away on the eastern rim of the Grand Canyon, Dum Dum and Gabe are cleaning up from Godzilla's battle with Yetragar, the giant Bigfoot. And we get this nice thing here, when it's just Gabe and Dum Dum alone. Dum Dum admits to him, this me being grumpy, this me hollering at people and belly aching all the time, it's just an act.
And I will have to say, and I'd like Mary to weigh in here, but I'm reading that panel where Dum Dum says, "Putting on the crusty act is the only way I know how to get through. Besides, it saves a lot of time and grief." And I thought, this is Brian Keene.
It is!
Well, yes, as folks can hear, Mary is here in the background, almost as if the two of you planned that.
We did not plan it, but it is true. I'm like, Brian Keene is Dum Dum Dugan. You'll need to just have that mustache and a bowler hat.
Well, and I get what Dum Dum's saying here. And
of course
another
you do.
Marvel,
of course you do.
Another Marvel equivalent of this, more recent for our younger listeners. After you and Tom Snagowski were done on The Punisher, Garth Ennis followed your run. And he did this thing where the Punisher is living in an apartment building with other people. And he's trying to be crusty with all them and not let any of them get close to him because he doesn't want them to get hurt. But occasionally you'd see his carefully crusty facade slip. And you could tell Frank Castle, despite the plethora of issues that he had, cared about these people. And we see that here with Dum Dum. He cares about Rob. He doesn't want the kid flying off in the red Ronin armor. Mm-hmm. Which is a segue then to Rob flying off in the red Ronin armor.
Yeah, and it's actually a great panel of him flying off with the red Ronin armor, and it becomes, I really like what happens in the next couple of issues with Red Ronin, but I won't skip ahead, but I actually remembered these issues when I was rereading them. I was like, oh yeah, I remember this was really cool.
Yep, same here. The cliffhanger for next issue, which we'll talk about here later in the episode. I remember reading that as a kid, and it was a real genuine holy shit moment.
Yep.
Maybe not on the level of Phoenix getting killed in the X-Men, but it was still pretty big.
Yeah.
Rob is feeling bad about killing Yetragar. And he's chasing off after Godzilla. But before he can find Godzilla, Chris, what happens?
Well, before he can find Godzilla, what happens to Rob?
No, what happens to Godzilla?
Oh, Godzilla sees a strange light in the sky, like many alien abduction films from this era. Godzilla himself is then abducted by aliens. He's sucked off into this bright light in the sky and finds himself on the moon. Of course he's on the moon.
Of course.
And what I love about it is they do go to the trouble of setting up the fact that there is some kind of oxygen sheath that the aliens have put around Godzilla so that he can breathe on the moon.
And that's my quibble with this issue, Chris.
Yeah.
First of all, a note to our engineer, Tom Clark, his novel Good Boy on sale right now in paperback and ebook, by the way. Tom, I would like you to isolate Chris saying Godzilla gets sucked off. Because I have plans to use that later. But here's my quibble. this is the moon in the Marvel universe. Okay, it's been well established before this that there are areas of the moon that have oxygen, where the Inhumans live during this time, where the Watcher lives during this time.
Well, look, though, wait a second, though. These 3 issues, more than any, are issues that feel like they don't exist in the Marvel universe, even though Dum Dum and Gabe and S.H.I.E.L.D. and all of that and the conversations about Fury take place. Well, we'll get into it, but when the threat arises, it's perceived that Godzilla is the champion of Earth, and there aren't any other potential champions who could stand against these monsters.
That's true. That's true.
So I think this is a parallel Marvel universe, I think.
And speaking of something or a threat arising, a monster slithers from the fathomless depths of one of the moon's craters. It's called the Beta Beast. We're told it's a loathsome monstrosity spawned far beyond the visible stars.
And I do love the monsters in these 3 issues. I mean, they're really silly looking, but they look like things that would have been fashioned as kaiju toys.
Yeah.
So and I think they would have been great toys.
Yep, I agree.
Real ridiculous rubber monsters.
Yeah, brilliantly designed by Herb Trimpe. Some of my favorite work of his, is on this series, and these monsters are why. This thing has tentacles, it has insect qualities, bat qualities. It's just it's insane.
Yeah, and so there's this lengthy fight between Godzilla and the Beta Beast, which includes the Beta Beast firing like thorns / missiles out of its various appendages that apparently pass through the oxygen sheath around Godzilla and cause him a great deal of pain. And then the Beta Beast fires some kind of, its own sort of flame or laser at him. But this is a mistake, Brian.
Oh, yes, it is. Yes, it is.
Godzilla's hurt and he's pissed. And I feel like there's a missing opportunity here, a missed opportunity here, to express that, like the Hulk, the madder Godzilla gets, the stronger Godzilla gets.
Not only that, I think there's a missed opportunity here. One of my favorite Bronze Age Marvel comics is Conan the Barbarian, which Doug Mensch never wrote, and he should have, because when Godzilla retaliates against the Beta Beast, there's a panel that says, "Courage and rage, the keys to life." That should have been in a Conan comic.
Yes, it absolutely should have. Absolutely should have. Well, then Godzilla destroys the Beta Beast, kills it, and then there's a loud humming noise and an alien base hidden on our moon rises up out of a moon crater. And Godzilla is marching toward it to investigate.
Right.
Now, Brian, why don't you introduce these aliens?
Yes, these are the warlords of Beta. They're an extraterrestrial species that employed different monsters in their centuries-old struggle against the Megan warlords.
Now, I'm going to interrupt you and say, am I the only one to whom it occurred that Doug Munch might have had an ex-girlfriend named Megan? Because here we have, we are from the planet Beta, and we have long been at war with our rival planet, Megan. It just seems a little, I don't know, it just seems weird that our rival planet would be Megan. It's like, here's my rival planet, Susie. You know what I mean? Like, it's just weird. So I just thought that felt like a dig to me.
Alas, we'll never find out, because the only time we see the Betas or the Megans are here in these issues of Godzilla. They never show up in the Marvel Universe again.
Well, I think that's another pitch that Cullen Bunn needs to take on.
There you go, Cullen. But yeah, basically the Betas and the Megans, they've been having this war that spans across the universe, and they fight it not with soldiers, but with giant monsters. The Megans have 3 ultimate weapons called the Mega Monsters, which we're going to get to here in a little bit. The Beta's greatest weapon was the Beta Beast, which they decided to test Godzilla with, and Godzilla killed it. So now they're watching him outside their dome city on Earth's moon, thinking, well, maybe we'll use him instead.
Yeah. Well, that's what they were looking for, something stronger than their own thing, and hoping that Earth had its own defense, its own monsters for defense.
Right.
Which is apparently a thing that they found various places in the universe.
Right.
And they're out of defenses, essentially.
Exactly.
So if the Megans can use Earth as a staging ground for their attack on the Betas, that'll be it. If they can plunder Earth's resources and all of that stuff, so they need to have Godzilla try to fight the what are they called? The Mega Monsters.
The Mega Monsters. Yeah, basically the Megans are going to use Earth as a forward operating base, the way we did with Iraq. So that we could then go attack Syria and Iran eventually.
Yeah.
The Megans are going to do the same with us, and they're going to use their 3 most powerful war monsters, Triax, Rion, and Krolar, who we're told, on their way to Earth right now, to prepare the way for Earth's conquest.
Yeah. Yeah, and you have to love the cover of issue 13, Brian, which we'll segue right into, where Godzilla has one of these 3 monsters. Which one is this?
This one would be Triax.
Triax. Held over his head like Hulk Hogan in the ring in that era. And these monsters are... I mean, they're really cool, but they're also really, really stupid. And
I'll tell you, little Brian loved
me too. That's what I'm saying. Like, as a little kid, this one, and again, not Triax, which is this one that has the weird eye things. It's like an armadillo kind of thing.
Oh, yeah, no, this is Triax. You talking about on the splash page?
No, that's Triax. I meant
Triax.
The one on the cover. Okay, so if that's Triax, so
the one on the cover is what the hell is his name? Hang on here 1 second and I'll tell you.
All right.
He is Rion.
Rion, okay.
Yep.
All right, so that's Rion. Rion has a giant, like, flying saucer-shaped head that would cause any creature to fall over. That's Rion. Triax has Brian. I'm sure we'll put this on our the YouTube channel. His YouTube channel. Absolutely. There are eye stalks that stick out the side of Triax's head. But the best thing about Triax is that each of his sort of lumbering rhinoceros-style legs, the giant, like, massive, like, stumpy feet, on the bottom, they're like Iron Man's repulsor rays.
Yeah, so, it's really, really cool. I mean,
it's not cool. It's cool when we were 8. It's really cool, fucking silly now, but I love it anyway.
But so are the 70s Godzilla movies, man.
I know. I'm saying, like, it's joyously silly.
Exactly.
I mean? Like, I loved when I came upon that, I was like, wow, that makes it all worthwhile. That one panel of him, like, taking off from the ground. So good. It reminds me of the Gamera movies when Gamera flies.
Exactly. That's exactly it. Red Ronin, Rob sends Red Ronin in to join the fray, and we get some interpersonal conflict where he's still thinking about how they killed Yetragar, and he doesn't want to do that again. But as he and Godzilla are fighting, whatever this armadillo thing's name is, Triax. While they're fighting him in downtown Salt Lake City, we should mention, the other 2 monsters arrive.
Rian and Krolar.
That's right. And then it's just a free-for-all.
It is, and that's the best part. It's Red Ronin and Godzilla versus these three mega monsters. And I want a special shout out, Brian, to Krolar, who is my favorite of these monsters. With a massive mouth with giant teeth, that basically sucks up the part of the city of Salt Lake. It's just such a weird. You have to read it to understand what I'm talking about. It's silly as hell.
Again, I'll have some panels from it up on the YouTube channel. Hey, speaking of the YouTube channel, Chris.
Yeah.
We will double our listeners this week.
Excellent.
Stephen King did the gracious act of retweeting one of my videos yesterday.
Yeah.
So my YouTube subscriptions just exploded overnight.
Excellent.
And the very next video to go up on that channel is going to be this episode of Defenders Dialogue.
Excellent.
So,
well,
hello
thank you
to
as
all those
always to Uncle Stevie.
Yeah, there's no Pennywise here, but there is.
Well, so I want to mention that this thing about Rion or whatever his name is with the giant plate flying saucer head also has a tail that turns into essentially a helicopter rotor.
Yep, a giant buzzsaw.
So he flies by having his giant buzzsaw helicopter rotor ass in the air and the rest of him hanging upside down.
That's right. So,
I just can't. It's like, it's great, but it sounds so fucking stupid. Anyway, there's a lot of monster battling. Krolar burrows in the ground like Megalon, I think is the one that burrows in the ground, right?
Well, wait, before we get to that, there's one thing I want to point out. There's a sequence with Dum Dum and the National Guard. And Dum Dum wants the National Guard to stand down because Red Ronin and Rob are in the way. But this National Guard captain, I want to bring up something he does with the next issue, which we're going to get to here in a minute, but I want to call the listeners' attention to him. He first appears on page 14. He and Dum Dum get into it on page 20, and he is the comic relief next issue.
Okay. All right. So there's this panel, Brian. I'm not sure if we're on the same page, but there's a panel after him where it's 2/3 of the page is this one panel of Gabe Jones and his little shield craft, or Gabe and Dum Dum, flying into the fight, and it's Godzilla and Red Ronin and all three of these giant alien kaiju monsters, including the guy with his ass spinning in the air.
Yep.
It just goes so great.
Yeah.
It's like, it just made my day.
It does, but it spells doom for one of our cast, because in the midst of that battle, Red Ronin is holding helicopter ass over his head like a pro wrestler.
Yep.
And the whirling blade makes contact with Red Ronin's neck, and what happens, Chris?
Red Ronin, in a crushing blow to our efforts here and a crushing blow to the heart of my young self, is decapitated. The robot is decapitated. We hear Rob screaming as the giant head of Red Ronin with Rob inside falls to the ground from a great height. And then we see Rob dangling from, that same eye hole that I mentioned was so stupid, and unconscious and possibly worse.
That's right. But
wait, the other thing, Brian, that happens is that all along the Megans have been trying to get to the point where they could fire this additional ray that makes the mega monsters 3 times the size they were before. So now Godzilla has no Red Ronin to help him, and the 3 mega monsters are suddenly triple his size.
That's right. Which segs us.
I was
right
want to point out to our 3 or 4 listeners, please don't ask us how that makes sense. But go ahead.
Yeah, we go right into issue 14. I remember, the issue we just talked about. I remember getting that off the newsstand and just, like, holy shit. Well, I guess Tony Stark can fix it, but holy shit. And here we are with the issue after, which I did not get on the newsstand. So this was the first time reading it for me. And yeah, we open with this wonderful splash page of Red Ronin's head, disembodied head, Rob laying sprawled out of the eye hole, and Godzilla looming over the body like, holy shit.
Yeah, holy shit. Did that just happen? I needed Godzilla to make the Scooby-Doo noise.
And speaking of holy shit, this is what I'm talking about with this National Guard captain. He exclaims, holy crud, and continues to exclaim it throughout the issue, like multiple times on the same page.
Somebody needs to make Brian a t-shirt of that guy's face, that panel where the guy's saying holy crud. You can contact me and I will get it to him. One of our 4 listeners. Now, Brian, here's the moment that happens 3 or 4 times, well, every 3 or 4 shows, where I say, this gives me a fantastic idea for a Marvel Comics series.
Oh, no. What is
Not
it
this guy, no. But I was seeing the Red Ronin thing, and I thought, I know that he's shown up, and you would know better than I. He has shown up in subsequent Marvel Comics, but I thought...
Cullen has used Red Ronin, as a matter of fact.
And who's the pilot of Red Ronin in Cullen's stories?
I wish I could tell you, but I don't remember.
So I just think it would be so cool if in some future Marvel universe, like, in some Marvel universe that has Deathlock and Killraven and all those characters in it, one of Rob's descendants stumbles upon, like, there's been an avalanche and it reveals the Red Ronin armor, and inside the Red Ronin armor is like 150-year-old Rob, and he's barely conscious, but he's basically now like Tetsuo the Iron Man,
Yeah.
And he's part of the robot now.
Yeah.
Yeah. I want to see that.
That would be pretty cool. Now, Chris, I don't know how much we want to spend on this issue, because so much of it is just Godzilla with a little help from Dum Dum and Gabe just kicking monster ass.
Well, I want to say more than a little help. Gabe and Dum Dum actually really come into play here. And it really feels, and we don't spend a lot of need to just do any play-by-play, but I do love the fact that it really is a team-up.
It really is.
Gabe and Dum Dum really team up with Godzilla to defeat these gigantic monsters. I do want to point out 2 particular moments in the issue with the 2 monsters.
Okay.
One is with the burrower. I can't remember his name now.
Let's call him the burrower.
Yeah. Rian.
No, Rian is the giant.
Right. Rian is helicopter ass.
Helicopter butt.
In any case, the burrower has a horn, a big sort of rhinoceros horn in the middle of his head that he's able to then withdraw, like Wolverine's claws, into his head. And he burrows into the earth. And this is a strategy that's being directed by his alien masters. He burrows into the earth and then extrudes that claw again underground. And Godzilla, although Godzilla could just rip his belly open, Godzilla is grabbing him by the ass and trying to pull him back out of the ground so he can fight him properly.
Yes.
And this is part of the strategy of the aliens to distract Godzilla with the ass of this burrowing monster. And I just don't understand it. It's also one panel that does look especially sexual, but we won't.
Is that the panel with Gabe on page 17?
No, that's not what I was talking about.
Well, there's a panel that's extremely phallic. We see while Triax and Godzilla are fighting, Gabe is flying up in his little shield craft, and he's got the joystick in between his legs.
I see that.
Mary,
I see that now.
Mary, is that phallic to you?
Oh my!
It is. There's Mary. Hi. Yep. Say phallic, and Mary comes running.
Yeah, there she is. So, but yeah.
One by one, Godzilla dispatches the monsters. But Brian, I think the key element here is both the interplay with Dum Dum and Gabe and Godzilla, and most importantly, the way that Godzilla dispatches Rion, which is glorious, and it puts me in mind of the classic dinosaur fighting King Kong scene in the original 1933 King Kong.
Very much so. And it's poetic, too. He gets justice for Red Ronin. In his fight with Rion, he lifts him over his head. And keep in mind that helicopter ass is still whirring, and he bends the creature's neck backward and forces the creature to cut off its own head.
Yeah, it's beautiful. and again, I can't think of a panel that made me happier as a little kid. Just being like, that was the greatest thing ever.
It made me happy as a middle-aged man.
Yeah, and it makes Dum Dum Dugan especially happy because he cheers a gloriously loud wahoo from the sidelines.
Yep. Yeah, and the National Guard commander is having none of that. He tells Dum Dum, I don't believe it. You're letting one of the monsters get away. You've got to let my man open fire. And Dum Dum says, what monster? I don't see any monster.
Mm-hmm. And they let Godzilla walk away. But we should say as a coda, the result of all of this is also that the betas and the Megans now have no way to destroy each other. And so they are talking peace for the first time in generations.
That's right.
Thanks to Godzilla.
That's right.
So he's brought interstellar peace. And now Dum Dum thinks of him fondly instead. And Godzilla gets to walk away into the distance.
Now, Chris, I've got to ask, when you were a kid reading these classic Bronze Age Marvel comics like Defenders and Champions and Godzilla, did you ever play Cowboys?
Of course.
Did you ever play Cowboys versus Godzilla?
No, I didn't.
Well, listeners, if you've ever wanted to see Cowboys versus Godzilla, tune in next week because that's exactly what you're going to get with a storyline called Rome on the Range, which will lead into, in my opinion, the most bizarre storyline in Marvel's entire Godzilla series.
Yeah, well, not only that, but in many ways, the best.
Yes, I agree. Yeah. I agree.
Because the weirder it gets, to me, the better it gets.
All right, folks. Well, we really appreciate you tuning in and listening. If you like the show, maybe give us a review at Apple or Spotify or wherever you listen. Or if you're listening on YouTube, make sure you subscribe and like. One more time, a thank you to our engineer, Tom Clark. His zombie novel, Good Boy, which is like Watership Down meets Dawn of the Dead, on sale right now in paperback and ebook. Chris, anything to say?
Brian, only Excelsior, and I can't wait to continue this well into the future. It's the best hour I spend every week talking about nonsense.
It's the only fun I have all week, so yes.
In the background, Mary's going, hey!
She is, exactly. All right, we'll see you next week, folks.
You're listening to American Top 40. More tragedy in the news today. Kim Kardashian has a new baby. What the hell? There's nothing good to listen to. Hey, wait, what's this?
Anything noise. You gotta roll that out.
See, it makes me do weird things. I don't like it.
God damn it.
I'd be going down on myself?
Shit.
Hey guys, it's Bill,
Mick,
Maya,
and Junior
from the Unsupervised Podcast.
check us out every Thursday on the Project Entertainment Network.
Take a break from the stress of the world and come have a laugh with or at us.
Bill.
Thank you for coming to the Project Entertainment Network store. Please place your order. A good choice. A t-shirt for the horror show with Brian Keene. Amanda Method coffee mug. There's more. A Necrocast on hoodie. That's sharp. But why on earth would you want Bizong leggings? Wait. Are you Mr. Frank? The Project Entertainment Network store. Stacked with goodies from all your favorite podcasts. T-shirts, hoodies, mugs and more. www.projectentertainmentnetwork.com
My Favorite Story, a podcast author anthology featuring short fiction from the hosts of the Project Entertainment Network shows.
Three guys with beards. Jim Moore, Jonathan Maybury, and Chris Golden.
Tom Clark from Necrocast on
Brian Keene of The Horror Show. Chuck Buda and Armand Rosamilia of The Mando Method.
Mary San Giovanni of Cosmic Shenanigans.
Jay Wilburn from Matters of Faith.
John Urban Sick of Ink Stains.
Biz Zung's Mr. Frank.
Available on Kindle and in paperback and through the Project Entertainment Network store.
www.projectentertainmentnetwork.com.
This has been an exclusive presentation of the Project Entertainment Network.